I never thought it would happen to me. Not like this. I had always lived with the understanding that life was something solid, something I could control, or at least steer in the direction I wanted. But that night, everything changed. It started like any other. The world was bustling, and I was on my way home, minding my business, as the mundane details of life filled my thoughts. I had no reason to think that my life would take a turn in a moment, as it did. The crash was sudden, violent, a blur of noise and metal. One moment, I was in the car, feeling the rush of the tires on the road. The next, the world had turned into something I couldn't recognize. Everything was white. It wasn't bright, it wasn't blending, it was the kind of white that felt eternal, a presence, a peace, but a cold one, like the stillness after a storm. I wasn't sure if I was dead or simply suspended in time. I couldn't feel my body anymore. It was as if I had become untethered from myself, floating weightless. The panic was the first feeling I remember clearly. Where was I? Was I gone for good? And then, a sound, a voice. But it wasn't just a voice. It was the kind of voice that seemed to touch every part of me. A calmness washed over me, not from the surroundings, but from the figure that now appeared in front of me. The figure stood tall, radiating a presence that felt both gentle and immense. I couldn't look directly at them, not because of brightness, but because the figure exuded something that my mortal eyes weren't ready for. It wasn't a man, not exactly. It wasn't a woman either. It felt like both and neither at the same time, and yet it felt undeniably familiar, as though I had known this being for a long time, though I couldn't remember how. "I am here," the voice spoke softly, but it felt as if the words reached into the depths of me. There was no fear now, only calmness. "You have seen death, but you have not yet seen life." I didn't know what to say. It wasn't that I didn't want to speak, it was that no words felt adequate. My mind raced, but it could only seem to grasp bits and pieces of what had happened. One moment I was in my car, the next, here. This place. "Where am I?" I finally asked, though it felt like a futile question. "You are at a place between worlds," the voice answered, its tone kind, yet there was an unspoken weight to it. "A moment of transition. But more importantly, you are here because you must understand something. A message must be shared with you." The presence before me seemed to pulse, and I instinctively knew this wasn't just a dream or some passing vision. It was real. Real in a way that defied all logic I had known. The air around us seemed to shimmer, like the very fabric of reality was bending to allow this encounter to take place. "You've been living, but you have not been seeing," the figure continued. "The world you live in is changing, and with it, so too must your heart. You must prepare." I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. I didn't understand. Prepare for what? "Your world is about to face something much darker, much more insidious than you realize," the voice said, and this time, I could feel the gravity in the words. "The changes coming will not only alter how people live, but how they think, how they love, and how they connect with the divine." I didn't know why, but I understood the words. It wasn't like hearing them in my mind. No, it was deeper than that. I was feeling the weight of these changes in my bones, in my very being. "The mark is coming," the figure spoke softly, and even as the words left its lips, I felt a chill, a deep unease wash through me. "But it will not come as a monster, as something evil. It will come as a solution, a promise of peace, safety, security." I tried to speak, to ask questions, but the figure's presence grew stronger, not overpowering, but it was as though it commanded my attention completely. It didn't need to raise its voice or push me in any way. It simply existed in a way that pulled me in, compelled me to listen. People will be drawn to it, to the ease, the convenience it offers. But this mark, it will cost them their connection to the divine. It will make them blind to the truth, so that in their desire for comfort, they lose their way. I couldn't fully comprehend what I was hearing. The figure spoke of a future, something I was supposed to understand, but it was still too distant, too abstract for my mind to process. The figure then gestured, and suddenly, images filled my mind, like a rapid slideshow of what would come. I saw people, families, businesses, entire cities, all accepting this new technology, this promise of a better life. People wearing devices, scanning their hands, their foreheads, seemingly harmless at first. The convenience, the comfort. How could something like that be wrong? But then, the images darkened. People became colder. The connections they had with one another began to fade. In place of genuine relationships, there was dependency, a numbness to the spirit. People became so reliant on this technology, on this mark, that they forgot to question the cost. Their hearts grew distant from each other, from the divine, from the truth. I could see it clearly now. The world I had known was heading down a path I could not follow. A path that, if taken, would lead to spiritual blindness, a disconnection from everything I had ever held dear. The figure spoke once more, its voice gentle but filled with the weight of eternity. You must prepare. Not just for what is coming, but for what is already here. The seeds of this deception are planted all around you. But there is still time. There is still hope. And as those words filled my mind, I felt something stirring within me. It wasn't fear, not like before. It was a quiet strength, a knowing that something greater was at play. Something that went beyond the daily hustle, the routine life I had lived. I was being shown this to help others, to be a guide through the coming storm. You must awaken now, the figure said, its voice softening with warmth. For you are not alone, and you will not face what comes in isolation. You are part of something greater. There is a community of those who will remain faithful, who will hold on to the truth, no matter the cost. As the words settled in my mind, I began to understand. It wasn't just about surviving what was coming. It was about awakening, seeing the truth, standing firm, and sharing it with others. I didn't know how or when, but I knew my journey had just begun. The divine figure had shown me a glimpse of what was to come. It had shown me the path. And now, I had to prepare. As the figure's presence enveloped me in that place between worlds, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. But that calm was not without a subtle urgency. The voice, which had already spoken so much, now beckoned me to look deeper, to understand the path that awaited humanity. The figure extended its hand, not as a command, but as an invitation. I hesitated only for a moment before stepping forward, my heart pounding, though I couldn't feel it in the traditional sense. I was no longer confined to a body, no longer constrained by the usual limits of reality. Look, the figure said softly, and I followed the direction of its gaze. Before me, the world began to unfold, not as a static image, but as a flowing vision of events, some familiar, others strange and unnerving. At first, the images were pleasant. I saw a world of innovation, people bustling with excitement, their lives made easier by new technologies, new conveniences that promised to solve age-old problems. Phones shrank to almost nothing. Cars drove themselves. Cities buzzed with endless connectivity. People were connected in ways they had never been before. The world was becoming smaller faster. The promises were endless. Security, efficiency, ease. At a glance, it all seemed like progress. The vision before me played out like a dream, a future where everything was at your fingertips. I could feel the allure of it, the draw of simplicity. The comfort of knowing that everything, from my health to my daily errands, could be managed with the swipe of a finger, the touch of a button. I looked to the figure, but it remained silent, letting me observe. But the vision shifted, and a cloud passed over the landscape. The bustling cities grew quieter. I saw people, connected to machines, constantly checking their screens, their faces illuminated by the blue glow. A sense of isolation began to fill the air. There were no conversations, no meaningful exchanges. It was as if humanity was slipping into a haze, their connection to one another slowly dimming. The voice spoke again, now with a quiet sorrow. "This is the path humanity will choose," it said. "For convenience, for security, for comfort. But at what cost?" The images before me morphed again. This time, I saw people wearing small devices, perhaps embedded under the skin, or some kind of digital tattoo, marked with the insignia of a new system. A system that promised seamless integration, ultimate safety. No longer would they need to carry wallets, phones, or keys. With this mark, they would have access to everything: money, information, even their very identity. I felt the excitement, the hope, the ease of it all. It was intoxicating. So many problems solved in an instant, so many barriers removed. But then I saw the darker side. The people who accepted the mark seemed different, as though the light in their eyes was dimming. They became more reliant on the technology. Their actions, their choices, all seemed guided by this invisible hand. They were no longer making decisions. The system was making them for them. Their thoughts, their very consciousness, were no longer free. A feeling of dread began to tighten in my chest as the figure spoke again. "This mark, this system, will be seen as the solution to all that ails humanity. But what it offers is not freedom. It will be a prison for the soul." The world around me seemed to freeze, as if everything was suspended in time. I felt my own heartache, my own sense of loss as I watched these people. It was as though they had traded their souls for comfort, their connection to each other, and to the divine for the illusion of safety. The image shifted again, and this time I was shown something else, something far more chilling. I saw people gathered in groups, participating in rituals, perhaps unknowingly, in their desire for approval from the system, for the privilege of belonging. The mark, I realized, wasn't just a technology. It had become a symbol, something that people wore with pride, believing they were part of something greater. But in truth, they were slaves. Slaves to convenience, slaves to fear. And with each passing vision, I saw the consequences. Families torn apart, relationships fractured, people no longer able to connect with one another on a meaningful level. The hearts of many were hardened. They had grown numb to the pain of others, to the needs of their own hearts. They were no longer aware of the divine presence that had once guided them. The figure seemed to read my thoughts, its voice filled with a quiet sadness. "Do you see now?" it asked. "This mark will not come as something overly evil. It will be a gradual process, an almost seductive change. People will accept it for the sake of ease, for their own comfort. But in doing so, they will surrender the most precious gift they have, their freedom to choose, to think, to live with the divine light in their hearts." The weight of those words settled into my soul. How many would fall for this deception? How many would accept this false promise of peace, only to lose something far greater than they could imagine? I couldn't help but think of the people I knew, of the world I had left behind. How many of them would be swayed? How many would unknowingly march down this path, believing they were making the right choice? "You must understand," the figure continued, its voice now steady and firm. "The mark is not just a physical thing. It is a spiritual one. It will erode faith, blind the heart, and silence the spirit. It is a tool that will separate humanity from the divine. It is the ultimate deception." I felt my chest tighten as the weight of the truth began to settle in. The mark wasn't merely a piece of technology. It was a choice between connection to the divine and complete surrender to the world's false promises. "But there is still time," the voice said gently, as if trying to ease the burden of the knowledge it had just revealed. "You, and others like you, can still choose a different path. A path that holds on to faith. A path that builds communities, that holds fast to what is true and pure. The images faded slowly, and I found myself back in the quiet stillness of that space between worlds. The divine figure remained, its gaze fixed on me. "Now you understand," it said softly. "But there is more to learn. You must prepare. You must awaken those around you. The path ahead will be difficult, but not impossible." I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of the revelations I had just witnessed. There was so much more to understand, more to feel, but in that moment, a part of me began to realize that my journey had only just begun. The lessons had started, but they would continue on the other side of this encounter in the world that awaited me. The figure's presence was a constant, guiding force, yet as it spoke, I could feel the weight of its words sinking deeper into my consciousness. It wasn't just a vision, it was a warning, one that cut through the fog of my understanding and forced me to look beyond the surface of what I thought I knew. There was something unsettling about the way the figure described the mark. The truth wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, subtle, almost imperceptible at first glance. It moved like a shadow, creeping along the edges of a society that was already too distracted, too eager for progress to see it. The divine figure gestured, and the world around me shifted once again. The future unfolded, but this time the vision was not so obvious, not so dramatic. I saw people in everyday situations. A mother picking up groceries, a child attending school, a father logging into his work account. They seemed ordinary, nothing special. But as I watched, I saw how seamlessly the technology had infiltrated their lives. At first, it was small, unnoticed. A new app here, a better payment system there. A device embedded into their skin, not as a visible mark, but as something so discreet, so integrated into their being that it was impossible to tell where the body ended and the system began. The figure's voice broke the silence, its tone soft yet resolute. "Do you see how it begins?" it asked. "At first, it will seem harmless. People will be told it is for their own convenience, their security. And they will accept it, just as they have accepted so many other changes without question." I watched as the world became increasingly dependent on this new system. At first, there was no real compulsion to take part, just a gentle encouragement, a subtle pressure. Everyone wanted to fit in. Everyone wanted to be connected. The mark was presented as a solution, a way to streamline life, to make it simpler. People were assured that it was safe, that it was the future. How could they resist? I saw a young man, his eyes alight with excitement as he signed up for the newest upgrade. "It's just a chip," he said, a reassuring smile on his face. "A tiny one. No pain, no hassle. Everything will be easier. No more forgetting passwords. No more carrying cash. Everything will be at the tip of my fingers. It's just better. It's just smarter." I saw the faces of those around him, friends, family, all nodding in agreement, all reassured by the promise of a simpler life. But the moment the chip was implanted, something changed. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it. There was a subtle shift in the air, as though the light around him dimmed just a little, and the warmth that once radiated from his eyes faded. I looked to the figure. "What happened to him?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The mark is more than just technology," the figure responded. "It is a covenant, one that binds the soul to the world. At first, it will seem like an upgrade, something that makes life easier, more efficient. But over time, the subtle shift will take place. The choice to rely on the system, to place one's trust in it, will erode the trust in what is real. It will diminish the connection to the divine." I could feel the heaviness of the truth. The deception wasn't immediate. It wasn't a sudden fall. It was slow, gradual. People would not even notice the shift within themselves until it was too late. The figure continued. People will be deceived by the promises of progress. What they fail to realize is that in their pursuit of convenience, they will surrender their most precious gift, the ability to choose, to think for themselves, to live with the divine light in their hearts. The vision shifted, and I saw another face, a woman this time, with a look of quiet satisfaction as she scanned her hand over a sensor to access her home, her car, her bank account. She smiled as the doors opened, as the technology worked in seamless harmony. She was living the dream, the future she had been promised. Yet I saw something else in her eyes, a faint weariness that could not be disguised, a disconnect from the joy that once illuminated her soul. The figure's voice cut through my thoughts again. Do you see? The mark will not come as a forceful takeover. It will come as a convenience, a small step that leads to a greater one. People will make that first choice thinking it is for the better. But slowly, that choice will begin to influence everything they do. It will begin to dictate their lives. I could feel the despair rising in my chest as I watched the visions unfold. How many would be swayed by the promise of an easier life? How many would fall prey to the subtle deception of the mark? How many would look at their new reality, so comfortable, so perfect, and believe it was the solution to everything they had ever wanted? Many will never see it coming. The figure whispered. They will not recognize the choice they are making. It will be masked by the promise of security, by the desire for peace. The system will offer them what they think they want, but in doing so, it will take away everything they truly need. I felt a deep ache within me as I realized what was at stake. It wasn't just technology. It was more than just a system that controlled people's movements, their choices, their identities. It was a tool of control, a mechanism that would reshape the very fabric of society. And all the while, it would appear to be benevolent, even kind. But what of those who resist? I asked. What of those who refuse to accept it? The figure's eyes softened. Their faith will be tested. The world will become divided, those who trust in the system, and those who place their trust in what is unseen, in what cannot be measured. It will be a difficult path for them, for all of them. But they will be the ones who hold fast to the light, to the truth. And in the end, it is they who will find peace. I felt the stirrings of hope, but it was accompanied by a deep sorrow. It would not be an easy path for anyone. The world would grow darker, but within the darkness, there would be those who would stand firm, who would resist the subtle pull of the mark. They would be the ones to remind others of the truth they had almost forgotten. The vision began to fade, but I could still feel the weight of the figure's words pressing against my chest. The deception was already in motion. The shift had already begun. And now, the only question that remained was whether humanity would see the truth before it was too late. As the visions faded, I found myself once again standing in the presence of the divine figure. The peace that surrounded me was now tinged with a sense of urgency, an understanding that the warnings I had seen were not just for me, but for everyone. The figure's calm, steady voice broke the silence once more, carrying with it the weight of eternal wisdom. There is time, the figure said, but time is fleeting. It is not enough to merely understand the dangers that lie ahead. You must prepare, both spiritually and practically. You must strengthen the foundation of your faith and build the communities that will be your refuge in the coming trials. I felt a deep stirring in my soul, a knowing that this was the pivotal moment, the moment when I could no longer be passive. The warning was clear. The path ahead would require more than just belief. It would require action. It would require a readiness that reached far beyond the physical world, a readiness that rested firmly in the heart and in the hands of those who chose to act. Spiritual preparedness comes first, the figure continued, its voice soft yet resolute. Strengthen your faith. Trust in what is unseen, in what is eternal. Know that no matter how great the trials ahead may seem, you are not alone. You are never alone. But you must choose this path, and you must walk it with conviction. There will be temptations, moments of doubt, but your faith will carry you through if you nurture it daily. I could feel the weight of those words, knowing deep down that I had not been living with that kind of conviction. I had drifted through life, often distracted by the noise of the world, by the promises of convenience and ease that society so willingly offered. I had not prepared my soul for the trials that would come. But now, the need for a deeper, stronger connection with the divine was clear. I needed to seek him with all my heart, to embrace the quiet moments of prayer, to listen for the still small voice that would guide me through the coming storm. Each day, set aside time to pray, to meditate, to align yourself with the truth, the figure advised. Do not wait for the world to fall apart before you seek peace. Let that peace dwell in you now, and let it be the foundation of everything you do. The weight of this directive was both comforting and heavy. It was a reminder that faith was not a passive thing. It required intention, it required discipline. It was a daily choice, a constant pursuit of truth, love, and understanding. The figure then turned its gaze upon the world once more, and the scene shifted before my eyes. Now, I saw not just individuals, but communities, small groups of people, gathered together in love and unity. Some were families, others were friends, but all were bound by a shared commitment to faith. They were building something that could withstand the darkness that loomed on the horizon. They were strengthening each other, lifting each other up, providing the support that would be necessary when the trials came. Build your communities, the figure said gently. You will not be able to stand alone in the days ahead. The strength of the faithful will come from their unity, from their ability to support one another, to offer a safe refuge for those who have lost their way. Gather with like-minded souls, strengthen your bonds, and help one another grow in spirit. I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity as I watched the communities form. It wasn't about creating large institutions or complicated systems. It was about coming together, family, friends, neighbors, to nurture faith and mutual care. It was about being a source of strength for one another, not just in moments of crisis, but in the small, everyday moments where life's true essence resided. I realized that community was not just a network, it was the foundation of survival, both physically and spiritually. There will be those who fall away, the figure continued. The pressure will be immense, and many will be swayed by the ease of the mark. But there will also be those who resist, those who hold firm to the truth. Your role is to be a light to them, to remind them of what truly matters. You are called to strengthen the body of believers, to support each other in love, and to share the wisdom you have gained. The figure's words echoed in my heart. I realized that the preparation was not just for myself, but for others as well. This message, this truth, could not be kept to myself. It was not enough to merely understand the importance of spiritual growth and community building. I had to share it with the world around me. I had to help others see what I had seen, so they could prepare as well. Now, the figure said, turn your attention to practical preparation. In times of crisis, there will be a need for practical skills. Skills that will help sustain life in ways that technology cannot. Learn the ways of self-sufficiency. Learn how to grow food, how to repair what is broken, how to live in harmony with the earth. In the days ahead, the systems you depend on now may falter. Be ready for that. I saw images of people learning these skills, caring for the earth, growing their own food, building homes with their hands. The technology that once seemed so essential was now a distant memory, a relic of a past age. The future, it seemed, would require a different kind of preparation, one that wasn't dependent on devices or systems, but on the enduring strength of human ingenuity, creativity, and faith. The mark will promise everything, the figure cautioned, but it will strip you of your independence, your connection to the divine, your ability to sustain yourself. Do not allow yourself to become dependent on the systems of man. Learn to live simply, to rely on your own hands, and to trust in the provision of the divine. As I stood there, absorbing the weight of the divine figure's words, I understood. Spiritual preparedness, community building, and practical self-sufficiency were not just ideals. They were the very tools I needed to navigate the darkness that was coming. They were the foundation upon which I could build a life of meaning, of resilience, of faith. But more than that, they were the keys to surviving, not just in the world to come, but in this moment, right now. It wasn't enough to wait for the storm to pass. I had to begin preparing today. Not just for myself, but for those around me. Not just spiritually, but practically as well. And with that, I knew what I had to do. I had to share this message to help others understand the importance of what lay ahead. The road would not be easy. It would be long and filled with challenges. But with faith, with community, and with the right preparations, I could face whatever came next. And so, I made a silent vow in that moment. I would build. I would grow. I would prepare. And I would share. The future was uncertain, but I would not face it unprepared. I would face it with faith, with hope, and with the strength of the divine guiding me. The atmosphere around me shifted once again, the divine figure's presence deepening into something even more profound, almost overwhelming. A gentle warmth seemed to fill the space, a lightness that went beyond the physical, a presence that seemed to cradle every part of my being. I knew this moment was the culmination of everything, the purpose for which I had been brought here, the purpose for which I had experienced it all. You have seen the darkness that is coming, the figure said, its voice filled with a quiet, unshakable calm. You have seen the trials, the deceptions, and the struggles that will unfold. But I tell you now, there is hope. There is always hope. I stood still, absorbing the words. A deep part of me wanted to reject the weight of the reality I had witnessed. The visions of a world consumed by the mark, people lost in their pursuit of convenience, society unraveling beneath the strain of technological advancements. I had seen it all. It was hard to imagine that in such a world, hope could still exist. But as the figure spoke, I felt something shift within me, something I had never felt before, a deep-rooted understanding that the path ahead, though fraught with peril, was not the end. No, it was merely another chapter in a story that had been unfolding for eternity. You see, the figure continued, darkness never lasts. It may stretch on longer than you can bear, it may cloud the skies and the hearts of men, but it is not permanent. Just as the night gives way to the dawn, so too will the world see the light again. The revival you seek begins within you, and in those you touch. The words resonated deep within me, and for the first time, I felt a quiet sense of peace amidst the storm. I had been so focused on the coming darkness, on the looming threats of society's technological advances, that I had forgotten the light was always there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when it could pierce through. The world will change, the figure explained. But you must not lose heart. The coming trials are a test of faith, a test of resilience. They are not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. And even in the midst of suffering, there will always be a way back. For those who stay rooted in faith, for those who remain steadfast in love, there will be revival. You will see it, though it may not come in the way you expect. The divine figure's words echoed through me, and I could feel the weight of them, like a seed being planted deep in my soul. Revival. Salvation. These were not distant hopes, but active, living possibilities. I was not to despair. The world, as dark as it may grow, would never be beyond the reach of divine intervention, of healing, of rebirth. It was up to those who understood, those who were prepared, to hold the flame of faith high, to keep the light burning through the dark times. In those days, the figure said, those who have built their faith will shine like beacons. The light that you carry will guide others who have lost their way. Your strength will be found not in yourself, but in the community you build, in the love you extend, in the hope you refuse to let go of. Do not fear the future. Fear only the loss of faith. I understood now that the purpose of everything I had experienced was not to simply witness the coming darkness, but to know that I had the power to contribute to the light that would counteract it. It wasn't about avoiding the trials or escaping the pain. It was about navigating it with an unwavering belief that, in the end, love and faith would prevail. The figure turned to me once more, its expression one of complete understanding, and for a moment, I saw a reflection of myself in its eyes, a person full of uncertainty, but also a burning desire to do what was right, to be a vessel for something greater than myself. You will not face this alone, the figure reassured me. The power of faith, of love, of community, these will be your guides. You will return to the world with a renewed mission. You will speak of the lessons you have learned. You will prepare others, and you will see the world begin to shift. But remember this, when the darkness seems too great, when the future feels too uncertain, you are not abandoned. You are never abandoned. As these final words sank deep into my heart, I felt a pull within me, a sense that the experience was drawing to a close, that I would soon be returning to the world I knew. But as I prepared to leave this sacred space, a quiet resolve settled over me. I knew what I had to do. I knew that my life had been transformed by this encounter. It was no longer about simply surviving the trials ahead. It was about actively participating in the hope, the revival, the salvation that was always within reach. The divine figure smiled gently, and I could feel its love, a love that transcended all understanding. It reached beyond time, beyond space, beyond any earthly experience. And in that moment, I realized that this was what it was all about, this love. This divine, eternal love that would carry me through whatever came next. Then, the figure slowly began to fade, its presence softening, until all that was left was the profound peace that lingered. The light around me dimmed, but within my heart, the flame burned brighter than ever. With a sudden rush, I felt myself drawn back to the world, back to the body that had once been mine. The transition was sharp, like the sudden breath of cold air after being in warmth. But in that moment, I knew something had changed within me. The message was clear. There would be darkness, yes. There would be trials, yes. But there was also light, and where there was light, there was always hope. And with that hope, the possibility of revival, both personal and for the world, was never truly lost. I returned to my life, but I was no longer the same. I carried with me a renewed mission, a sense of purpose. I was no longer a passive observer of the coming storm. I was a participant in the unfolding of a greater truth, a truth that would guide me and those around me through the darkest days. And I knew deep in my soul that this journey, this transformation, was just beginning.